everyone! Welcome to LearnWithUs.tv, where you can get the latest information on global updates. Make sure to stay tuned!
Hi everyone! For today, we will learn about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But first, let's get to know the tutors for today.
Hi everyone, my name is Nur Izzati Fitri.
Hi guys, I'm the second tutor and my name is Azrin Risha.
Hi, hello! My name is Nomai Surah binti Ahmad Tamizi.
Hello guys, I'm Muhammad Ammar bin Muhammad Nazri, one of the tutor in this lesson.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Adli Azri and I am the fifth and last panel. I will be talking about the objectives of Sustainable Development Goals. Our first panel, Nurul Izzati, will be talking about Sustainable Development Goals in general.
Hi, my name is Izzati, and so today we are going to introduce the 17 Sustainable Goals to you. But before that, let's get to know about SDGs. So, what are they? Well, SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, or Global Goals, is a collection of 17 interlinked global goals that was designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and sustainable future for all. The Sustainable Development Goals was set up in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly. A variety of tools exist to track and visualize progress towards the goals. So for example, they use the online publication SDG Tracker to measure progress towards SDGs. So this SDG Tracker presents data across all available indicators from the Our World in Data database. They are using official statistics from the UN or from other international organizations. And the 17 goals are intended to be achieved by the year 2030 and was included in UN resolution called the Agenda. So to reach the 17 goals, there must be target and indicators to determine how to achieve the goals. So for each goals, there exist 8 to 12 targets, and for each target, there must be between 1 and 4 indicators to measure progress towards reaching the targets. So, and targets here means outcome of the targets, or circumstances to be attained, or means of implementation targets. But how do we know that these indicators or targets are up to date? Well, they have to do reviews of indicators, and these indicators will be reviewed once every few years so that it is up to date with current times, and to change it if needed. For example, the latest indicators that was last reviewed was during the 51st session of the United Nations Statistical Commission that was held in New York City from 3 to 6 March 2020, and it will be reviewed again in 2025. So during the meeting or session, a total of 36 changes to the global indicator framework were proposed for the Commission's consideration, and some were removed or updated during the session. So there were 3 tiers while reviewing these indicators. So tier 1 and tier 2 are indicators that are conceptually clear, have an internationally established methodology, and data are regularly produced by at least some countries. And tier 3 indicators had no internationally established methodology or standards. So if the indicators were on tier 3, they will be abandoned, replaced, or refined. So now that we've got a brief idea on what are the Sustainable Development Goals, so I have also mentioned about 17 SDGs. So what are the 17 SDGs? So let's get to know more about them. Just a little FYI, there are only 2 targets that will be mentioned in this table, as I will only explain briefly. If many of you are interested in knowing SDGs, you can go ahead and visit the UN website for more in-detail information. But for today, I will only tell you about each goal's aims and targets. The year by which the target is meant to be achieved is usually between 2020 and 2030. However, for some of the targets, no end date is given. So let's start with the first goal, which is no poverty. So the aim of the first goal is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. So how they're going to achieve that? So these are the targets for the first goal, which is the eradication of extreme poverty and reduction of all poverty by half. Okay, and for the second goal, the aim is to end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So to do this, the target that they want to achieve is to end hunger and improve access to food, also to end all forms of malnutrition. Okay, so let's move on to the third goal, which is the good health and well-being. So the aim for the third goal is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. And the target for this particular goal is the reduction of maternal mortality and to end all preventable deaths under 5 years of age. Let's move on to the fourth goal, which is quality education. The aim for the fourth goal is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And the targets for the fourth goal is that some or more country, hopefully, to have a free primary and secondary education, also to have equal access to quality pre-primary education. The fifth Sustainable Development Goals is gender equality. The aim for the fifth goal is to achieve gender equality and to empower all women and girls. The target here is to grant women and girls equal rights, and so that they will have the opportunity to live free without discrimination, and that discrimination includes workplace discrimination or any kind of violence towards women or young girls in general. The sixth goal is to have clean water and sanitation for all people. And the aim for this goal is to ensure availability and sustainable management for water and sanitation for all. So water is basically what all of us have taken granted for, but some of the countries do not have easy access to clean water and sanitation, unfortunately. And therefore the targets for the sixth goal is to have safe and affordable drinking water, also to end open defecation and provide access to sanitation and hygiene for all. For the seventh SDG is for affordable and clean energy for all. Yet again, the target for the aim for this goal is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And the target for this goal is that to have a universal access to modern energy and to increase global percentage of renewable energy. So let's move on to the eighth goal, which is decent work and economic growth. Why we need this is because the UN aims for the people to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, and that are full and productive employment and decent work for all. So how are we going to achieve this? The UN aims target for full employment and decent work with equal pay to end modern slavery, trafficking, and child labor. And then the ninth goal is to have industry, innovation, and infrastructure. The aim for this goal is to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. The target for this particular goal is to increase access to financial services and markets, also to upgrade all industries and infrastructures for sustainability. So, the 10th goal is to reduce inequalities among countries. So that is also part of the aim, is to reduce income inequality within and among countries. So the target for this particular goal is to reduce income inequalities and to promote universal social, economic, and political inclusion. So let's go to the 11th goal, which is sustainable cities and communities. The aim for this goal is to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. So how are they going to achieve that? So the target here is to have a safe and affordable housing and also affordable and sustainable transport systems. So the 12th goal is to have a responsible consumption and production. And the aim for this goal is to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. And the target here is to reduce waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling, and reuse, also to encourage companies to adopt sustainable practices. We now move on to the climate action, which is 13th goal for the SDGs, which is the aim is to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts by regulating emissions and promoting developments in renewable energy. The target here is to integrate climate change measures into policies and planning, also to build knowledge and capacity to meet climate change. The earth is dying and we need to hurry up to save our planet, the place that we're living right now. And that is why climate action is put in one of the goals in SDG. This is really important for us. And that is why we are also going to move on to the next goal, which is life below water. Human being is not the only beings on this earth. There are animals and trees, and that is why the 14th SDG is about life below water. The aim here is to conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. The target here is to reduce marine pollution, protect and restore ecosystems. Also, these animals are really important for the ecosystem and for the earth and for the balance of the earth. We need them, they need us. Then let's go to the 15th SDG, which is life on land. We talked about earth, we've talked about water. Let's talk about the land, which is the aim is to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss. The target for this particular goal is to conserve and restore terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems, also to end deforestation and restore degraded trees, forests. Okay, so now let's move on to the 16th goal, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. The aim for this particular goal is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice and for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. And how are UN going to do that? It is by looking at their target, which is to reduce violence, protect children from abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and violence. So last but not least is the partnership for the goals. Of course, this is important because if you want to achieve something, we need to have partnerships from other people, also to have monetary help as well. So the aim for this last goal is to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. And the target here is to assure that countries and organizations cooperate instead of compete. Also to develop multi-stakeholder partnerships to share knowledge, expertise, technology, and financial support. So it's good to have competition, obviously, healthy competition even, but it's much better to cooperate with each other and share among each countries to have a better and developing countries more. So I think that's the end of my part of sharing about the SDGs. So now let's move on to the next presenter. Now that we know about the goals, what about their background or behind the scenes? Let's ask Azurine about this. Azurine, how and why does SDGs exist?
In every event that happens throughout the world, there are always historical backgrounds that follows behind it, right? So the same thing goes for the SDGs. SDG had actually came a long way for years and years. What is the background of the SDG? So as it has been mentioned before, SDG refers to Sustainable Development Goals. It was first developed at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro in 2012, way before when it was set up in the United Nations General Assembly in 2015. So the SDG is actually a part of history of multilateral effort to shift the world onto a sustainable and resilient pathway. The main purpose of this development was to set up a universal goal that meets the urgent of environmental, political, and economic challenges facing our world. Now, did you know that originally SDG was actually a replacement of a project that was similar to it, which called the MDG, also refers to the Millennium Development Goals. MDG started a global effort in 2000 to tackle the indignity of poverty. However, as for the millions of people around the world, unfortunately, the job remains unfinished. World hunger, full gender equality, health services, children's education, all of these are still the main concern that needs to be tackled with and needs to be taken into action throughout the global. And that's when SDG came into the picture to finish the job MDG started. Now that you have briefly listened to the background of the SDG, let's hop into the chronology of the SDG development. So firstly, in 1972, the intergovernmental efforts were formally began since the United Nations Conference, focusing on human environment. And then after that, the phrase sustainable development was adopted in 1987 and was then popularized in a report of the United Nations Commissions on Environment and Development. The very definition of the phrase sustainable development that was then used for the next 25 years can be defined as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And then in 1992, this intergenerational concept of sustainable development was adopted at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro. Over time, the development captured a more holistic approach, linking three main dimensions of sustainable development. These three main dimensions are so known as the economic development, social inclusion, and environmental sustainability. Later on 2012, which when I mentioned previously when the whole idea of SDG was developed and set up, this three-part vision of sustainable development was finally emphasized at the 2012 Rio de Janeiro conference. It is aimed to provide a global framework for cooperation to address the three dimensions of sustainable development within an ethical framework based on the right to development for every country, human rights and social inclusion, convergence of living standards across countries, and shared responsibilities and opportunities. Next, we will be focusing into the 5 key opportunities set out by the SDG agenda. The first one is inclusive development. In this opportunity, the SDG will engage multiple stakeholders at all levels of society to give voice to the needs and interests of the people they represent, enabling better planned and better informed initiatives. So basically, all stakeholders will be acting in collaborative partnership in order to make this agenda of the SDG into a success. The main thing is that no one is left out and no one is left behind. The second key opportunities is the universal development. Countries throughout the globe will be asked to build on current policy instruments and frameworks to meet the goals and targets, taking into account differences in national contexts and development levels. This means that the rich countries will add assistance through finances, technology, in order for them to tackle the concerns that I've mentioned before. The third key opportunity is the integrated development. In this opportunity, the SDG will focus on the need for good governance and strong social networks, which translate into a framework focused on people, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. It is to promote the integration of the economy, environment, and society. It is believed that the success of one leads to the success of all. The fourth key opportunity is the locally focused development. The SDG believe that local authorities and communities are responsible for the realization of the goals at local scales, recognizing in particular interdependent relationships between urban, peri-urban, and rural areas. Last but not least, the fifth key opportunity is technology-driven development. New technologies will also offer tremendous opportunities to deliver public services, including healthcare, education, and basic infrastructure, to more people at lower cost. Now that was on the background of the SDG. Now, before we get into further details about the SDG, let's firstly learn about the MDG. So what is MDG?
Do you guys know that SDGs was built on the success of 8 Millennium Developmental Goals, which is the MDGs? It is a mobilizing collective action around a time-bound set of globally agreed goals. It was adopted in 2002 as a framework to operationalize the Millennium Declaration. So what's this Millennium Declaration all about? The declaration was adopted by the member states of UN General Assembly in the year of 2000. They held the belief of collective responsibility to uphold the principles of human dignity, equality, and equity at the global level, along with eradicating the world's extreme condition. So, let's take a look on what are the 8 MDGs. The first one we have is eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. The second one is achieve universal primary education. And the third one is promote gender equality and empowering women. The fourth one is reduce child mortality. Do you know what is child mortality? Child mortality is the mortality of children under the age of 5. The child mortality rate is the probability of dying between birth and exactly 5 years of age expressed per 1,000 live births. This is why it is important to reduce child mortality, because it is a leading indicator of the level of child health and the overall development in countries. Okay, let's move on to the number 5, which is improve maternal health. Number 6, combat HIV and AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. Number 7 is to ensure environmental sustainability. And the last one would be global partnership for development. So, MDGs has been a great and successful global effort to the world. There have been many achievements since MDGs started to be used as the framework. One of them is, since 1990, more than 1 billion people have been lifted out from extreme poverty. Not to forget, since 1990, child mortality dropped by more than half. And the number of out-of-school children has also dropped by more than half. Next, since 2000, HIV and AIDS infections fell by almost 40%. Do you know, since the MDGs started, 91% of the world population uses improved drinking water. And what's more better than that is, ozone-depleting substances have been almost eliminated, and ozone layer was predicted to be recovered by mid-century. Lastly, since 2000, Official Development Assistance, aka ODA, has increased 66%, providing an additional support financially. MDGs was concluded at the end of 2015 to be more focused on the most vulnerable population and address extreme poverty, hunger, diseases, gender equality, education, and also environmental sustainability. It also marks a historic and effective global mobilization efforts to achieve a set of common societal priorities. MDGs also promotes global awareness, political accountability, improved monitoring, mobilization of epistemic communities, which is the education, civic participation, and public pressure. Last but not least, the legacy and achievements of the MDGs provide us with beneficial lessons and experience for us to begin working on the new goals, which is the SDGs. And that is all about MDGs. Next, we will learn about the agenda. So what is SDGs agenda?
First and foremost, we must know the meaning of agenda. So what does agenda actually mean? Luckily, I have scoured through the Cambridge Dictionary and find 3 definitions for agenda. The first of which define agenda as a list of matters to be discussed at a meeting. Now, a list of matter could be anything from a to-do list to a list of possible activities for future event, for example. Next, the second definition of agenda that I have came across in Cambridge Dictionary is a list of aims or possible future achievements. Now, this definition is self-explanatory, and thus we go to the last Cambridge Dictionary definition of agenda. The last one defines agenda as a secret aim or a reason for doing something. Now, an example of this would be a political agenda, or another example would be an ideological agenda. Now, we have go through all 3 definitions of agenda that is listed in Cambridge Dictionary. Let us take a look at what the UN define the agenda in this context. So, according to the UN Nations 17th Sessions General Assembly's preamble, they call this agenda as the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. It is defined as a plan. It is defined as a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. It also seeks to strengthen the universal peace in larger freedom. Moving on from the definitions, we have the agenda itself. What is the agenda? What is it built of? And what is it consist of? Now, the agenda is called the Agenda 2030, as the goals are expected to be fulfilled by the year 2030. The new agenda is guided by the purposes and principles of the Charter of United Nations, including full respect for international law. It is grounded in the Universal Declarations of Human Rights, international human rights treaties, the Millennium Declarations, and the 2005 World Summit outcome. It is also informed by other instruments such as the Declarations on the Right to Development. In addition to that, it is also considered a collaborative partnership between countries and stakeholders, and consists of 17 goals, of which has been previously mentioned in this lesson. Furthermore, it is built of MDG, or Millennium Development Goals, to complete what MDG did not achieve. And as such, the Agenda of 2030 covered 3 dimensions: the economic dimensions, social dimensions, and the environmental dimension. Next, we will go through the area focus in the agenda. Now, there are 5 areas focus in total in the agenda. These are people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. All 5. Now let us take a look in details what does these areas mean. Now, first and foremost, the area focus are people. According to the resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly on 25th of September 2015, this means that the agenda targeted to end poverty and hunger in a global scale. The next is planets, which the agenda aims to protect the planet from degradations, including through sustainable consumptions and productions, sustainably managing its natural resources, and taking urgent actions on climate change. Afterwards, the third area focus is prosperity, in which the agenda aims to allow all human beings to enjoy prosperous and fulfilling lives where economic, social, and technological progress all occurs in harmony with nature. The fourth area's focus is peace, in which the agenda aims to foster a peaceful, just, and inclusive societies which are far removed or are free of fear and violence. Last but not least is partnerships, in which the means required to implement this agenda is through a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development, and it is based on spirits of strengthened global solidarity. Now, according to the UN website, and I quote here, with just under 10 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, world leaders at the SDG Summit in September 2019 called for a decade of actions and delivery for sustainable development, and pledged to mobilize financing, enhance national implementations, and strengthen institutions to achieve the goals by the target date of 2030. leaving no one behind. With the quote ended, we have entered the last part of this section, which is 2019, the decade of action. Another reason for the call for decade of actions is the COVID-19 pandemics. Now, the COVID-19 pandemics and its impact on all 17 SDGs has shown what began as a health crisis has quickly turned into a human and socio-economic crisis. And while the crisis is jeopardizing progress toward the SDGs, it also makes their accomplishments all the more vital and necessary. And as such, it is essential that the recent gains are protected as much as possible. With that out of our way, let us take a look at the decade of action itself, in which it can be divided into 3 levels of actions. The 3 levels are global actions, local actions, and people actions. Now, global actions aim to secure greater leaderships, more resources, and smarter solutions for SDGs, while local action embedding the needed transitions in policies, budgets, institutions, and regulatory frameworks of governments, cities, and local authorities. And last but not least, the people actions. Now, the people actions includes youth, civil society, the media, private sectors, unions, academia, and other stakeholders to generate an unstoppable movement pushing for the required transformations. With that, we have come to an end on this section. Thank you so much for listening. Last but not least, we will be learning about the objectives of Sustainable Development Goals. So, what are the objectives of SDGs?
So what are the objectives of Sustainable Development Goals? The objective was to produce a set of universal goals that meet the urgent environmental, political, and economic challenge, particularly in securing economic development, securing social equity and justice, and securing environmental protection. Although these 3 objectives can work in harmony, they are often found to conflict with one another. In the later half of 20th century, economic development for a better standard of living has been detrimental to the environment. We are consuming more resources than the environment can provide and polluting the earth with waste products. However, societies can't live in a healthy society or economy with so much poverty and degradation. Thus, economic growth will remain the basis for human development while at the same time not compromising the environment. The aim of Sustainable Development Goals is to balance our economic, environmental, and social needs, allowing prosperity for now and future generations. Sustainable Development Goals aim to develop and achieve a healthy community by jointly addressing economic, environmental, and social issues while avoiding the overconsumption of key natural resources. We need to go to the last mile on ending hunger, achieving full gender equality, improving health services, and getting every child into school beyond primary education. The Sustainable Development Goals are a bold commitment to tackle some of the more pressing challenges facing the world today. All 17 goals interconnect, meaning success in one affects success for others. For instance, dealing with the threat of climate change impacts how we manage our fragile natural resources. Achieving gender equality or better health helps eradicate poverty. And fostering peace and inclusive societies will reduce inequalities and help economies to prosper. In short, this is the greatest chance we have to improve life for future generations. Sustainable Development Goals encourage us to conserve and enhance our resources by gradually changing the ways in which we develop and use technologies. Countries must be allowed to meet their basic needs of employment, food, energy, water, and sanitation. If this is done in a sustainable manner, then there is a definite need for a sustainable level of population. Economic growth should be supported and developing nations should be allowed growth of equal quality to the developed nations. For example, underdeveloped and developing nations should get the same funds and plans the developed nations get. This will ensure a fair development across the globe. So, are the objectives achievable or not? Let's take a look at the first one. Securing economic development. With how things are, we still have miles to go. This is due to the fact of the worrying wealth gap, as we can observe in our country itself. For example, business opportunities are concentrated more in the elite group of the society. This shows that the chance and opportunity to grow economically through businesses favor mostly the rich. As the saying goes, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. A healthy economy should be accomplished where there is a high percentage of middle-income earners in the society. However, that is not the case in our country at least. Now, let's take a look at the second objective, securing social equity and justice. As we can see, in the past decade, there has been a steady rise in the movements for the rights of marginalized groups in our country. This is a step further to improve gender and race equality in our society, among others. Next, our health services show a great potential, as we can see from how our Ministry of Health, specifically Dr. Nur Hisham, handled the first wave of COVID-19 last year. It is not an easy feat to achieve, even globally. And our educational opportunities are getting better as we have made it compulsory to attend secondary education. So there are better opportunities for the youth. Now let's take a look at the third objective, securing environmental protection. In the last 5 years, it has been popular among the younger generation to reduce single-use plastics and start using metal straws and reusable bags. We are also encouraged to bring our own reusable food containers for takeouts. These initiatives will help in reducing pollution of plastic waste. However, industrial waste is a far greater threat, and big corporations don't seem to show any signs of stopping and coming out with initiatives anytime now. This is worrying. However, in my opinion, these objectives are achievable in the long run with the right regulations and plans, nationally and globally. The Sustainable Development Goals are unique in that they cover issues that affect us all. They reaffirm our international commitment to end poverty permanently everywhere. They are ambitious in making sure no one is left behind. More importantly, they involve us all to build a more sustainable, safer, more prosperous planet for all humanity. With that, it marks the end of our video. For those of you who have made it this far, we would like to express our gratitude. Thank you very much for staying until this point of the video. And that is all from us. Thank you.